The examination chamber was a testament to Kthar efficiency. Pristine white surfaces gleaming under cold blue light, an array of monitoring equipment lining the walls with their silent vigilance. Not a single extraneous element marred the clinical perfection. Even the air felt sterile, processed to the exact specifications required for optimum Kthar cognitive function. Chief Analyst Kalen stood motionless, his iridescent carapace reflecting fragments of light as he surveyed the preparation procedures. 6 secondary limbs extended from beneath his primary arms, each one occupied with a different task, adjusting settings, reviewing preliminary data, and occasionally tapping rhythmically against his exoskeleton in what might have been interpreted as impatience in a less logically rigorous species. Sub-analyst Vix confirmed neural interface calibration. Kalen commanded, his voice a precise modulation of clicks and humming tones, automatically translated by the room's systems into standard intergalactic communication frequencies. Vix moved with quick, nervous energy, her smaller frame darting between monitoring stations. Unlike Kalen's deep burgundy exoskeleton, hers bore the lighter amber coloration of youth and lower rank. Her compound eyes flickered rapidly as she processed multiple data streams. Calibration complete, Chief Analyst. Neural agonizer pathways aligned to human neurological patterns and sensitivity thresholds, she reported, though a subtle vibration in her mandibles betrayed an underlying tension. The subject has been secured and prepared as specified. At the center of the chamber sat the focus of their attention. Subject 734, officially designated as a suspected human infiltrator captured within a restricted zone of the Kthar Research Nexus. The subject, a female human with close-cropped dark hair, was secured to an articulated examination platform, restraints at her wrists, ankles, and across her torso ensuring minimal movement. Neural agonizer interfaces had been carefully affixed to her temples and at precise intervals along her spine, their silvery surfaces contrasting with her olive skin. Unlike most subjects brought to this chamber, 734 displayed no outward signs of fear. Her breathing remained steady, her posture as relaxed as the restraints would allow. Most striking were her eyes, alert, observant, methodically scanning the room and its occupants with an almost analytical detachment that seemed incongruous with her situation. Kalen activated the session record with a gesture, initiating examination session THX 2187. Subject 734, human female, approximate age 35, standard cycles, captured in section Gamma 9 of stellar cartography. Primary objective: intelligence extraction regarding potential human infiltration network. Secondary objective: continuation of Project Rational Response, neurological data collection on pain threshold variations among emotional species, with specific focus on outlier tolerances. He turned slightly toward Vix, though his attention remained primarily on the monitoring systems. This session represents a significant opportunity to advance our understanding of human neurological responses to controlled stimuli. The prevailing hypothesis remains that sufficient pain application renders emotional species incapable of maintaining deception, though human subjects have historically shown anomalous resistance patterns. The Directorate considers quantifying these resistance thresholds essential to our long-term security protocols. Vix nodded, her secondary appendages making minute adjustments to the monitoring equipment. Previous studies have yielded inconsistent results. Humans appear to possess highly variable pain responses that correlate poorly with physiological indicators, a manifestation of their inherent emotional chaos. Kalen responded dismissively. Today's session will employ the full spectrum of neural stimulation with unprecedented precision. The neural agonizer technology represents our most advanced methodology, direct stimulation of specific pain centers without physical damage that might contaminate the response data. Throughout this exchange, Subject 734 remained silent, though her eyes had fixed upon Kalen with unsettling intensity. A slight upward curl appeared at the corner of her mouth, not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. Commence level alpha stimulation, Kalen ordered. Standard interrogation pattern. Vix hesitated almost imperceptibly before executing the command. On her console, she activated the initial sequence, and the neural agonizer emitted a soft, almost musical tone as it engaged. The effect on subject 734 was immediate and measurable. Her vital signs spiked, heart rate increasing by 31%, respiration becoming shallow and rapid, stress hormones flooding her system as indicated by the biochemical monitors. Her muscles tensed visibly, jaw clenching, a light sheen of perspiration appearing on her forehead. Her fingers gripped the edges of the restraint platform, knuckles whitening. Yet she made no sound, not a whimper, not a gasp. Her eyes never left Kalen's face. After precisely 2 minutes, Kalen gestured for Vix to pause the stimulation. Anomalous initial response, he noted. Subject demonstrates physical indicators consistent with alpha-level pain reception, but displays atypical behavioral restraint. Vix's antennae twitched nervously. The neural feedback confirms the stimulation is functioning correctly. Pain signals are being transmitted at expected efficiency. However, the vocalization response is indeed absent where our models predicted at minimum involuntary vocalization. Initial resistance is not unexpected, Kalen responded, though there was the faintest hint of perturbation in his otherwise even tone. The data remains within acceptable parameters for this phase. Resilience typically diminishes exponentially as stimulation continues. He stepped closer to subject 734, looming over her with his considerable height. You're experiencing what your species would classify as severe pain. This is merely level alpha. Cooperation now would be the rational choice. For the first time, 734 spoke, her voice surprisingly steady despite the residual effects of the stimulation. Interesting assumption, analyst. That rationality drives human decision-making under duress. Kalen's compound eyes shifted, facets realigning to focus more intently on her face. It is the only logical path. Continue with level beta stimulation. Vix complied, activating the second sequence. The neural agonizer's tone deepened as it engaged at a substantially higher intensity, a level calibrated to incapacitate most known sentient species and render them immediately compliant. Subject 734's body reacted violently, arching against the restraints as much as they would allow, tremors running through her limbs, vital signs spiking dangerously. Sweat now ran freely down her temples, and her breathing became ragged, punctuated by suppressed gasps. Yet still, remarkably, she contained any scream that might have escaped a less disciplined subject. Kalen began the formal interrogation. State your mission objectives. Who dispatched you to our facility? What were your targets within the stellar cartography section? Subject 734 took several shuddering breaths before responding, each word clearly requiring immense effort to produce. Let me tell you a story. Analyst. Kalen's mandibles clicked in irritation. This is not a storytelling session. Answer the questions directly. She continued as if he hadn't spoken, her voice growing marginally stronger as she forced the words out through her pain. The silicates, arrogant like you, captured a human. Exploration team, 37 people. Another labor breath. They used high-frequency sonic waves, designed to cause neural compliance through discomfort, expected submission. Kalen signaled Vix to increase the intensity slightly, but did not interrupt. Data collection could continue regardless of the subject's diversionary tactics. Instead, 734 continued, a strange intensity burning behind her eyes. The sound triggered an unpredicted mass psychological response. Synchronized frenzy. The captives attacked each other, then their captors tore them apart with bare hands. No weapons. 17 silicates dead before they could respond. The survivors never attempted that method again. She fixed her gaze directly on Kalen's compound eyes. Your logic is impressive, analyst, but it only works when variables follow rules. Humans. We are variables that often don't follow rules when pushed to extremes. Kalen maintained his composed demeanor, though the account had registered an unexpected response in his neural pathways, a primitive reaction that his species had largely evolved beyond. Record the subject's statement as diversionary fiction utilizing intimidation tactics, he instructed Vix. Likely constructed from cultural mythology. Yet something in the precise details of the account disturbed his methodical thought process. Vix accessed restricted archives regarding interspecies containment failures. Search parameters, silicate encounters with human subjects, neural compliance methodologies, anomalous group responses. Vix's appendages moved rapidly across her console, initiating the search through heavily classified records. After several moments, she spoke, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Chief Analyst, I've located fragmentary reports regarding a silicate research vessel, the Crystalline Resonance, approximately 17 standard cycles ago. Most details are heavily redacted, but references exist to an unexplained containment failure involving human test subjects and aberrant psychological responses to stimuli. The incident resulted in significant silicate casualties and the termination of a specific research program. Kalen remained outwardly impassive, but his secondary limbs had gone completely still, a sign of intense concentration or disturbance among the Kthar. Correlation is not causation, he stated, as much to himself as to Vix. The subject could have knowledge of classified events without her narrative being accurate. He turned back to Subject 734, whose eyes had never left him despite the lingering effects of the beta-level stimulation. Your attempt to manipulate this session through fear inducement is noted but ineffective. Kthar methodology is based on empirical precision, not crude silicate approximations. Something that might have been amusement flickered across 734's face, visible even through her pain. Is that what you tell yourself, Kalen? That you're different? More advanced? More logical? She inhaled sharply as a particularly intense wave of stimulation coursed through her. Every species thinks they're the ones who finally solved the human equation. Kalen felt an unfamiliar sensation, a disruption of his typical thought patterns, an irritation that bordered on something a more emotional species might call anger. This human was not responding according to established parameters, and worse, was attempting to assert a psychological dominance that was completely irrational given her physical subjugation. Increase to level gamma, he ordered abruptly. Vix's head snapped toward him, her antennae rigid with alarm. Chief Analyst, protocol dictates a minimum 30-minute evaluation period between escalation levels to override protocol. Kalen interrupted, a rare occurrence that demonstrated his growing disquiet. This subject is implementing resistance techniques that require immediate counteraction. Reluctantly, Vix executed the command. The neural agonizer's tone changed to a deep, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate the very air of the chamber. Level gamma represented pain of a magnitude that the Kthar testing on themselves had been unable to endure for more than 4.3 seconds before emergency termination. The effect on subject 734 was devastating. Her body convulsed violently against the restraints, muscles spasming beyond voluntary control. Blood appeared where her teeth had cut into her lower lip. Her breathing became erratic, punctuated by harsh, involuntary gasps. The biometric readings showed her system flooding with stress hormones, her heart struggling to maintain rhythm under the onslaught. Yet somehow, impossibly, her eyes remained open, watering, bloodshot, but open, and fixed on Kalen with a focus that defied physiological explanation. Final opportunity, Kalen stated, his voice raised to be heard over the sound of the agonizer and the subject's labored breathing. State your mission parameters and objectives. Through the tremendous pain, a trembling smile formed on 734's bloodied lips. Second, story. She managed, each word a battle against her body's desperate urge to surrender to unconsciousness. Interstellar, Trade Consortium, defrauded. Destroyed small human mining colony for chromium reserves. 1. Survivor. Kalen moved to increase the intensity further, but VIX intervened. Chief Analyst. Subject, vital signs approaching critical thresholds. Maintaining current levels already exceeds safety protocols. With visible reluctance, Kalen acknowledged the warning but did not order a reduction. Continue. Subject. Quickly. Between gasping breaths, 734 forced out her narrative. The survivor lost everything. Family, friends, home, spent 30 years rebuilding, creating networks, identities. A violent tremor ran through her body. Then, systematically, destroyed the consortium. Not with violence, with information, market manipulations, exposing secrets, creating internal divisions, until nothing remained. She somehow managed to lift her head slightly, eyes boring into Kalen's with frightening intensity. You measure pain thresholds, Kalen, but do you measure the threshold of obsession, of a singular purpose when everything else is gone? That's not data you can quantify. A distinctly uncomfortable sensation rippled through Kalen's neural network, the Kthar equivalent of a chill. The precision of her details, the specificity of her examples. They suggested either an exceptionally creative mind capable of detailed fabrication under extreme duress, itself a concerning anomaly, or access to information that should be well beyond her knowledge parameters. VIX, search database for references to human asymmetric conflicts, specifically prolonged retribution scenarios involving corporate entities. VIX complied, though her movements had become increasingly agitated. After a moment, her voice came, subdued and troubled. Multiple instances recorded, Chief Analyst. Most notably the Helios Consortium collapse of 2157, preceded by a 30-year period of unexplained misfortunes, strategic information leaks, and internal sabotage. Investigation eventually traced to a single human operative using multiple identities. Subject had lost family in a disputed mining claim where the consortium had employed questionable tactics. VIX's compound eyes shifted to Subject 734, who, despite the excruciating pain, appeared to be listening intently. There are 17 other documented cases following similar patterns. In each instance, a significantly larger entity was systematically dismantled by a smaller human force, often a single individual, following a perceived injustice. Time frames ranging from 7 to 34 standard years. Coincidental pattern recognition, Kalen dismissed, though without his usual certainty. The human capacity for creating narrative from random events is well documented. Chief Analyst, Vix said quietly, her tone conveying a rarely expressed disagreement. The statistical probability of these patterns occurring randomly is not relevant to our current objectives, Kalen interrupted sharply. He turned back to Subject 734, whose body continued to shudder under the relentless assault of the neural agonizer, yet whose consciousness remained inexplicably intact. Your diversionary tactics are ineffective. I will ask once more, what was your mission within our facility? Vic stepped closer, her voice lowered. Chief Analyst, I strongly recommend alternative methods. Chemical or psychological approaches may yield more reliable results with this subject. Current methodology appears to be activating unpredicted responses. The methodology is sound, Kalen insisted, a rigidity in his posture that reflected more than just Kthar physiology. It is the application that requires adjustment. Without further warning, Kalen reached to the control interface and activated level Omega, bypassing 2 intermediate levels and violating multiple safety protocols in a single action. The neural agonizer emitted a high, piercing tone that set even Kthar's sensory receptors on edge. Level Omega had never been deployed on any living subject. It represented the theoretical maximum neural pain stimulation possible without causing immediate cardiac arrest or permanent brain damage. The system had been designed with this upper limit as a fail-safe that would likely never be required or authorized. Vix recoiled, mandibles clicking rapidly in alarm. Chief Analyst, this level has not been approved for. Her protest died as Subject 734's response manifested. The human's body arched violently, straining against the restraints with such force that the reinforced platform actually shifted slightly. Every muscle tensed to what should have been breaking point, veins standing out against skin now pale with shock. The monitoring systems flashed urgent warnings as vital signs reached critical levels. Then came a sound, not the expected scream of agony, not pleas for mercy or incoherent wailing. Laughter, broken, ragged, interspersed with gasps of pain, but unmistakably laughter. It started low, almost a gurgle in her throat, then grew in volume and intensity until it filled the examination chamber. A sound so incongruous with the circumstances that even Kalen's disciplined mind struggled to process it. It was not the unhinged laughter of a mind shattered by pain. There was a terrible lucidity to it, a horrifying awareness behind it that suggested not a break from reality, but a transcendence of it. As though the subject had pushed through some barrier, discovered something unexpected on the other side. Through the laughter and labored breathing, Subject 734 began to speak, no longer in controlled sentences, but in a torrent of words driven by something beyond pain. "Zyler," she cried out, the name emerging with startling clarity amid her fractured speech. "High Technocrat Zyler. That's what this is really about, isn't it, Kalen? Not some phantom infiltration. Not your precious data." The name sent a jolt through Kalen's system. Zyler was the station's most senior scientific authority, a legendary figure whose advanced neurological research had earned him almost unlimited autonomy and resources. That this subject would know his name was concerning. That she would invoke it in this manner was deeply alarming. "You analyze threshold data," she continued, words spilling out between bursts of that terrible laughter, "while Zyler conducts the real experiments. Children, Kalen. Human children abducted from border colonies. Including my son." Her laughter abruptly ceased, replaced by an intensity that seemed to cut through her pain. "My son, my Eli, 6 years old, taken from our home while I was away. I tracked him here, not as a spy, not as an infiltrator, but as a mother. Do you understand that concept, Kalen? Can your logical mind comprehend what that means?" She strained forward against her restraints, eyes wild but focused. "You think this pain matters to me? This is nothing, nothing, compared to knowing what Zyler is doing to my child, to other children, converting them into data points for his perfected neural research." Kalen stood frozen, his usually fluid movements arrested by conflicting imperatives. The accusation was outrageous, impossible, yet the absolute conviction in the subject's demeanor triggered warning signals in his analytical processes. High Technocrat Zyler's research was classified at the highest levels. Kalen himself had only peripheral awareness of its parameters. The possibility that unauthorized human experimentation could be occurring within the facility was remote, but not inconceivable. "You've turned on the wrong switch, Thar," Subject 734 continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried more menace than her previous outbursts. "You activated something you cannot deactivate. Human mythology speaks of forces beyond your comprehension, the wrath of a parent whose child is threatened. There is no algorithm for this, no rational response, no predictable outcome." She leaned forward as far as her restraints allowed, blood trickling from her nose, eyes burning with an emotion that Kalen's species had no direct equivalent for, but which registered as profoundly threatening. "Your research asks, how much pain can humans tolerate? You're asking the wrong question. The question is, what will humans do because of pain? What will they become? What will they sacrifice? Who will they destroy?" Her laughter returned, softer now, but somehow more disturbing. "I'm not here to endure your pain, Kalen. I'm here to show you fear." Vix had backed away from the control console, her limbs trembling visibly. "Chief Analyst," she managed, her translator struggling to convey the distress in her natural vocalizations. "We must terminate this session immediately. The subject's claims require investigation before we—" "Silence," Kalen commanded, though his own certainty had been severely compromised. The rational part of his mind insisted this was an elaborate deception, a desperate ploy by a captured infiltrator. Yet something more primitive, a vestigial instinct his species rarely acknowledged, responded to the human's demeanor with a sensation uncomfortably close to fear. Subject 734 continued, her words becoming more deliberate despite the ongoing omega-level stimulation. Check Xyler's secure files, Kalen. Section Delta, 12 Epsilon. The project designation is Neural Patterning in Developmental Stages. You'll find records of 17 human children, including my Eli. You'll find methodologies that would horrify even your logical mind. Her voice dropped again, becoming almost gentle despite the circumstances. And you'll find that I'm not the only parent searching. There are others. We've formed our own network. This isn't an infiltration, it's a reckoning. In that moment, watching the impossible resilience of this human mother, listening to accusations that threatened to undermine the very foundations of Kthar's scientific authority, something unprecedented happened within Kalen's rigidly ordered mind. Doubt, not the productive scientific doubt that leads to refined hypotheses, but a corrosive, existential doubt, began to erode his certainty. What if she was telling the truth? What if Xyler had indeed crossed boundaries that even the Kthar, with their utilitarian ethics, had established as inviolable? What would it mean for their society, for their claims of rational superiority over emotional species? More immediately, what would it mean for Kalen himself, who had unwittingly participated in this system, who had just subjected a desperate mother to the most extreme pain their technology could produce, not for legitimate security reasons, but to protect a potentially monstrous truth? Vix, he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady, deactivate the neural agonizer. Immediately, the high-pitched whine of the device ceased abruptly, leaving a silence that seemed almost tangible in its intensity. Subject 734 collapsed back against the platform, her body shuddering with aftershocks, breath coming in ragged gasps. Yet her eyes remained open, fixed on Kalen with an expression that contained neither victory nor hatred, but something perhaps more disturbing, a terrible knowing. Kalen and Vix stood in stunned silence, the immaculate order of their scientific methodology shattered by what they had witnessed. Not just the physical endurance that defied their models, but the glimpse into an aspect of humanity that their extensive studies had somehow failed to quantify. The transformative power of parental love and rage. What do we do now? Vix finally asked, her voice barely audible, all protocol and hierarchy momentarily forgotten in the face of this unprecedented situation. Kalen's compound eyes shifted rapidly, processing multiple decision paths simultaneously. His logical subroutines demanded verification of the subject's claims. Before any action, his self-preservation instincts recognized the potential career destruction, or worse, if he raised false accusations against someone of Xyler's stature. Yet something else, something the Kthar rarely acknowledged, pushed him toward a third option. We will transfer the subject to Special Containment Omega, he decided. Maximum security, maximum isolation, officially for further specialized interrogation. He turned to Vix. Seal all records of this session under highest encryption protocols. Cite anomalous data integrity incident as justification. Vix hesitated, clearly struggling with the implications. And the subject's claims? Kalen's gaze returned to Subject 734, who, despite her physical state, appeared to be listening intently. Will be privately investigated through secure channels. For the first time since the Omega stimulation had begun, Subject 734 closed her eyes, a subtle relaxation visible in her features. Not relief, precisely, but perhaps the satisfaction of having planted a seed of doubt that would grow of its own accord. Later, alone in his private analysis chamber, Kalen reviewed fragmented footage from the session. The sound of the human's laughter seemed to linger in the room long after the recording ended, an echo that his logical mind insisted was impossible, yet his sensory receptors continued to detect. His limbs moved with uncharacteristic hesitation as he accessed the encrypted command terminal and entered his highest security clearance. After several layers of authentication, he input the search parameters, neural patterning in developmental stages plus Xyler plus section delta 12 epsilon. The system processed for several seconds, then returned a response. Access restricted. Clearance level, Omega Prime required. Current user clearance insufficient. Kalen's mandibles tightened. The file existed. That alone confirmed part of a human's claim. With methodical precision, he began composing a secure message to the Ethical Oversight Committee, a rarely invoked authority that operated independently of the scientific hierarchy. He worked carefully, citing only verifiable observations and protocols violated during the interrogation session, making no direct accusations, but raising questions that would necessitate investigation. As he prepared to transmit the message, Kalen realized that the Cathar study of human pain tolerance had indeed come to an end, not because they had succeeded in quantifying it, but because they had glimpsed something beyond quantification. They had stopped not out of scientific completion, but out of a primal fear of what they had seen in Subject 734's eyes, fear of what her resilience represented, and perhaps most disturbing of all, fear of what it revealed about themselves. The Cathar prided themselves on having evolved beyond fear, beyond the emotional chaos that they believed limited other species. Yet in that examination chamber, confronted with the raw power of human determination driven by love and rage, they had encountered something their logical frameworks could not accommodate, and they had retreated from it. Kalen transmitted the message, then shut down his terminal. The investigation would proceed through proper channels now, methodical and thorough, as Cathar processes always were. But he knew with sudden clarity that regardless of the outcome, he would never view humans, or his own species, quite the same way again. They had studied human pain tolerance, then stopped out of fear. Not fear of humans, ultimately, but fear of the unsettling recognition that beneath their logical exoskeletons, the Cathar might not be so different after all.